Joining us now, former FBI Special Agent Clint Watts. He's a national security analyst for NBC News and MSNBC. So, Clint, we'll spare you the politics of all this and how the United States is talking to Israel. Let's talk about the tactics here for the IDF and how this war is going from their point of view. Obviously, the world has concerns about the mounting civilian casualties there. Israel says, we're going to keep going until we root out Hamas. They've said that from the beginning. How is that operation going?
Willie, I think it's at a point of where there's no clear objective or end state inside Gaza. If you look at what the Israeli military has done, they were very successful in the early days of breaching the perimeter, setting up some forward operating bases, going after what they said in North Gaza was the epicenter of Hamas activity and exploring a lot of those tunnels. It wasn't long before they said they were moving towards southern Gaza, and in moving towards southern Gaza, they were then moving towards where they had just displaced most of the Palestinians that were in the Gaza Strip. So they actually made their problem worse by pushing everybody south and then going to the south where all the people are at. That's that refugee camp that you were talking about as part of the introduction here today. So looking at this situation, it is eerily similar to what I remember from the global war on terror of the United States, which is no clearly defined objective, no clearly defined exit plan. If they're focused on really going after Hamas's senior leaders, it's not really clear that they know where they're at this point. They have eliminated some, but they were unlikely to eliminate all of them. And then the question is, how many more future Hamas members are they making in terms of radicalizing an entire society through the use of things like DUMS bombs or hitting civilian targets and creating mass civilian casualties? So I think they're in quite a predicament at the moment.
So, Clint, if you're counseling the IDF on this, and this is some of what the White House and State Department and the U.S. military has been saying to Israel, which is to be more targeted in your efforts, to not kill as many civilians as they've been killing, to which the IDF says, we're going after Hamas. Hamas puts civilians between itself and our bombs and our soldiers. And this is a strategy from Hamas. We're going to go until we get rid of Hamas. We're going to go until we bring the hostages home, and there will be civilian casualties. What is the IDF to do in that predicament?
Yeah, I think they've got to exhibit patience, Willie, and come up with a strategy to really separate the people from Hamas, meaning they have to separate the civilian side of the situation. And that would be things like, how do you build in aid that is going to flow very, successfully into southern Gaza to try and relieve some of that burden that's going on there. Separately, they can isolate and destroy these networks. We saw this with the U.S. military, for example. Once they moved away from trying to focus on terrain or dominating entire bits of terrain, then going after actual al-Qaeda networks and targets, which they did in Iraq after 2 or 3 years of a different approach, then they will find some success. Ultimately, though, they need to define what the end state is, and saying they're going to go till there is no more Hamas, that sounds eerily familiar to we're going to fight terrorism as a whole. You might remember this 20 years ago, where it was never clear what the end of that is, what that would be, and what an exit strategy would be. And I just would remind everybody that this has taken an incredible toll also on Israeli society and the Israeli economy. So it is a downward cycle in terms of what's happening in Gaza, also in terms of what's happening in Israel. And every day that this prolongs, we're looking at the potential for a larger regional war that could bring in many different parties as well.